Beneath its beauty, Vancouver, Canada has a noticeable divide between rich and poor. Multi-million-dollar condos are just minutes away from rooming houses and hotels occupied by Vancouver's poorest residents. The downtown east side is home to some of the city's most vulnerable, including the homeless, mentally ill, and drug addicted. In recent years, the spread of homelessness is evident in other areas of the city due to its increasing cost of living and lack of mental health services. Less than 4 miles away from the downtown east side lies one of the richest neighborhoods in Canada. This area, known as Shaughnessy, features multi-million-dollar mansions with carefully landscaped gardens hidden behind password-protected gates. While it's a beautiful area to live in, a lot of these mansions are empty, with their owners living mainly overseas. A caretaker had the job to cut the grass of the front lawn of one of these Shaughnessy mansions. Its owner had been overseas for years. On one spring morning, on April 22nd, 2022, a team of construction workers were called to do maintenance in the back garden. When they got there, they discovered a grisly scene. Lying on the grass, with some fingers and part of her skull missing, was a young woman. She had been lying there, dead, for over a year. Police said she likely died on or near the property. No one had discovered her because the back garden was so overgrown. The caretaker had never been back there to cut the grass. The victim was 24-year-old Chelsea Poorman, an Indigenous woman, originally from Regina, and her family from Kawakatoose First Nation in Saskatchewan. Chelsea was the middle child with 2 sisters. She was a caring young woman and would often bring hot drinks to homeless people living on the streets of Regina. She loved makeup and dreamed of being a makeup artist or a paramedic. In 2014, she suffered a brain injury from a car accident which greatly affected her life. It made it difficult for her. She regressed mentally, walked with a limp, and needed a cane. She was vulnerable. Chelsea moved to Vancouver in July 2020 to access the healthcare she needed and to be closer to her family who had moved there before her. Chelsea went missing on September 6, 2020, just a few months after moving to Vancouver. On the night she disappeared, she had dinner with her sister, then attended a party in an apartment on Granville Street downtown. Granville Street is a known area for partying on weekends, with many bars, restaurants and clubs open until the early hours. In recent years, it's also become home for some people living on the streets and has been the location for random attacks on strangers by mentally ill people. On the night she went missing, Chelsea texted her sister to say she was leaving the party to meet up with a man. It's unknown who this man was, but Chelsea referred to him in her text as her new bae. Chelsea was last seen on the corner of Granville and Davie around midnight. According to investigators, Chelsea also had some contact over social media with another man that night. The police interviewed him, but nothing came out of it. Sheila Poorman, Chelsea's mother, filed a missing persons report the next day, but police didn't issue a public notice until 10 days later. Sheila made sure to tell police about Chelsea's mental disabilities and urged them to look for her daughter, but nevertheless, this public notice wasn't issued for 10 days. 2 months later, the Vancouver police determined Chelsea was in fact vulnerable and sent the case to the homicide unit to be investigated. This angered Sheila, who had been telling police for weeks that her daughter had disabilities. Sheila and Paige, Chelsea's younger sister, organised missing posters and rallies to try to get the public's attention and to try to get any information at all about the whereabouts of Chelsea. And it wasn't until April 22nd, 2022, almost 18 months after her disappearance, that Chelsea's body was found in the back garden of the Shaughnessy mansion. How Chelsea got there is unknown. It wasn't until 2 weeks after the body was discovered that police notified Chelsea's family. The party that Chelsea attended was downtown at 1200 Granville Street, and her body was found more than 3 miles away. The house lies at the intersection of Granville Street and West 36th Avenue. It's an affluent area just across from the Van Dusen Botanical Gardens. Her mother says that part of Chelsea's skull and some of her fingers were missing. It's possible that animal activity was the cause of this, since coyotes and other wildlife frequently roam the streets of Vancouver. Chelsea's phone and her IDs were also missing, but her clothing was still there. Mike Kiernan, Chelsea's stepfather, admitted to breaking into the vacant mansion where Chelsea was found and discovered what he described as items that would typically come from Chelsea's purse. He stated that these items were just left there and not collected by police. Due to Chelsea's remains being so decomposed, the BC Coroner's Service could not determine the manner of death, and on May 6, 2022, just 3 weeks after she was discovered, the Vancouver police said that Chelsea's death was not suspicious. They said there is insufficient evidence to suggest her death was the result of a crime. The Union of BC Indian Chiefs and the Federation of Indigenous Nations hit back at Vancouver police, saying the abrupt halt of the case from the VPD is emblematic of the absolute crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Chelsea's mother is appealing for any information about where her daughter was or who she was with the night she disappeared. She noted that Chelsea could not walk long distances due to her injuries. She said it takes her 20 minutes just to walk 2 blocks, so she would not have ended up at the mansion by walking there. Does that mean somebody took Chelsea there that night? It is rumoured that the house she was discovered in was a known party spot due to it being empty. Perhaps there was a party going on there. Perhaps Chelsea's death was due to an overdose. Unfortunately, there was no toxicology report done. Or did someone take Chelsea there that night, knowing the house would be empty? Perhaps they intended to kill her. It is unknown if Chelsea was sexually assaulted. There are so many unanswered questions about this case because the police did not take time to investigate. Despite the Vancouver Police's findings, this case does remain open because the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, have decided to look over the case file. A deputy for the VPD said it's not unusual for another agency to do a file review. The purpose is to see if there is another angle or something they've missed. What do you think happened to Chelsea Poorman that night? And how did Chelsea end up at that mansion anyway? She could not have walked that distance. Perhaps the man she was meeting that night took her there, but for what reason, we may never know.